Hi, y'all, and welcome back to There's Danger Here. I'm Leilani. Before we begin, I need to read this excerpt from a letter. Quote, I reached out to Riot recently, sent her a long letter along with her Christmas card this year, explaining, or attempting to, anyway, that I truly do understand the rigorous demand of her everyday life, but for these past few years I have regretfully felt her listing farther and farther away from me, and hopefully that it's not too late to change the course of things. Maybe that was selfish of me. While I love my daughter more than anyone or thing else in my life, perhaps it is best for her own mental and emotional sanity to forget about the father who unwillingly abandoned her and who is probably never getting out of prison. Maybe the only right thing that I can do by her is to remain peacefully where she buried me, in her memory. I am beginning to fear that I am only causing her unnecessary pain. End quote. Shawn and I talk frequently, and without hesitation I can say, not being in your life, Riot, has been his ultimate source of rue. Even when I spoke to him face to face, that was one of the first things I knew of him. He had a daughter, with one of the most epic names I've ever heard, and he continued to love her. That is, his regret is deep. I can tell you, it takes a toll on him. He probably feels this burden the most. But if you happen to stumble upon this, don't. Just don't listen to the rest of this. I've asked for all of the details in the case that has put him into prison for life, and he has given them to me. Okay, let's move forward, shall we? The person we're going to discuss today is one of the reasons I wanted to get the point of view of the people who committed crimes. Working at a maximum security penitentiary, he was one of the first that openly answered questions, not just about his case, but the culture and the rules within the prison, explaining the undercurrent within the walls. He worked for a time up in the infirmary as an orderly, the prison's version of a nurse's assistant, and he is pretty lighthearted and helpful. After I left the system, I reached out for this podcast, and now I consider him family. My children even call him uncle.
What's up, girl?
Hi, how are you?
Good. How you doing?
I'm doing good. It's good to see you finally.
Right on. You too, man. It's been a minute since our last visit.
I know. It's been months and months. Did you want to come say hi?
And months.
Hang on, there's a little one.
Hi.
Yeah. What's up, little man? How you doing?
Good.
Doing good. Right on, little brother.
Are you gonna say anything?
School going good?
Is school good?
Is school going good for you? No. He said school sucks.
Say hi really quick.
Hi.
Who's that?
Me.
How you doing, girl?
Good.
She got nervous.
We finally meet. Man. I saw your school picture. It turned out awesome, and I wanted to say thank you for all of the pictures that you've been sending me with your mom's letters. I saved them all, and I really appreciate it. You're a good artist. You should keep up drawing.
I'll take it away because she's nervous. You can say hi.
I feel offended.
Wait, do I have to
did
go?
not give
I gotta
consent.
go.
No, not you. Not you.
I don't give consent.
She knows all these.
You know what?
She knows all these terms to sound like a lawyer. She's very dangerous. She's not the one.
That's good, though. I mean, the mind is the biggest weapon we can have, right?
Yeah. She likes to call us all snitches when we tell people things.
Because you are one.
I mean, I respect that.
Yeah, he respects that.
Yeah. I do. I respect that. I think,
Mom was a big
I'm
snitch.
with her on that.
Snitches get stitches.
I'm not kidding. See, I'm not going that far, but
Yeah, see?
yeah, but her heart is definitely in the right place.
Yeah.
Sure.
You know?
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he is one of the main reasons I continue talking with the inmates and those previously incarcerated to consider their point of view. While it took a long time for Shawn to admit to his crime, which of course resulted in a life sentence, he sounds earnest in his report. At points, it's almost easy to understand his point of view, especially once you understand how he grew up and the values that the penal system instilled in him. The way he goes about it, however, is what makes this heavy. This is the case of Shawn Yamate and the murder of Forrest Martin.
This is literally, you are the first person I think that I've ever had a video visit with.
Nice.
I don't think I've ever done this before. No.
Well, I mean, that's good and not good all at the same time.
Why is that? Well, I mean, the only other people I'd like to video visit with Riot eventually. You know what I mean? That'd be tight. But my dad's 85, 86
Yeah.
now, so you know what I mean. He can't figure this shit out.
Is Riot talking
He
yet?
can't figure out. Well, you say that like she's mad at me or something. She's not mad at me. She's just like I think I wrote to you about this. She's just living her life. You know what I mean? She's out there doing her thing. I sent her a long Christmas letter. Sent her a card and shit. Told her I loved her. I said I would like to reestablish some kind of contact with her. I said we can do this. We can video visit. She can write to me whenever she wants. Yeah, I got your last letter today.
Which one?
The one with the introduction.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I really liked it.
Okay.
I really liked it. What you had to say in the beginning and stuff. Like how you spoke directly to Ryan. That was nice.
Well, she lives out here, and that's like a lot of our listeners are from this area because we talk a lot about Pacific Northwest cases, not on it like on purpose. This just seems to be what I pick up the most. And so I was like, on the off chance that she hears it or sees your name come up on the podcast, you know, in whatever realm, I was like, I don't.
No, that's yeah, it was nice. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
And I think that is, yeah, I think it sounds good.
Okay.
Sounds good so far.
Shawn Christopher Yamate was born on June 5th, 1979, to parents Rick and Sherry Yamate. His parents separated when he was a young child. Young enough, he reports not ever having a memory of the two together. Shawn spent weekdays with his mother and weekends with his father. As he grew, so too did his family. His mother had another boy, and his father had two girls and adopted another. Early childhood was good. Shawn recollects some of his most cherished memories were playing baseball and taking care of animals at his mother's. The two would volunteer at wildlife rescue centers and foster cats and kittens, proving that love can rehabilitate any animal, no matter what they had suffered through in the past. Meanwhile, his dad was the person that got him into baseball. Shawn ended up in t-ball, then switched to playing baseball all the way through high school. His father encouraged his love of the game by taking him to Candlestick Park, where the San Francisco Giants played. Together, the two watched games and ate hot dogs. His father would also take Shawn up and down the California coast, seeking out secluded stretches of the beach where the two could camp, fish, and explore. Stopping to watch sea lions and splash around in tide pools. They would eat at roadside stands and buy seashell jewelry that Shawn proudly brought home as gifts to his sisters. At 12, Shawn's mother brought home a bargain bin tape, and Shawn found his third love, music. He became engulfed with the sounds of the 1950s doo-wop. This developed not just music, but the entire culture of the area. Full-blown greaser, with the hairstyle, the clothes, and the cars, finding this subculture alive and well in Northern California, placing a permanent reminder just above his eyebrows in the form of a tattoo, Sick Boy. The tattoo became his moniker, and he is called Sick Boy or Sick by his friends. Soon, he became a member of the Sacktown Street crew VD or Violent Drunks, preferring to call them a group rather than a gang. No affiliation to the Oregon Sick Boys, by the way. Though he remembers having a feud with the rival street crew, the Expos, and they started with just beatdowns using their fists, and their steel-toed boots, but progressing. Fists became knives, and knives eventually turned to guns. At 13, Shawn was arrested for the first time while breaking into the local sporting goods store with a friend. He was charged with second-degree burglary and sentenced to 6 months in juvenile hall. From there, his life became a revolving door between juvie and inpatient drug and alcohol rehabilitation centers. Juvie resulted in medical and mental health assessments, and like many revolving criminals, Shawn was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. The courts required medication, but finding the correct dose was difficult, and Shawn says that of this time, quote, "The meds never helped, and when I said so, they would just put up my dose or switch one medication out for another. It all seemed recklessly experimental. This endless barrage of medication ultimately resulted in my involuntary commitment to a mental hospital, a 5150, when I was 15, end quote. Shawn further reports that during the first night of his stay, he was given lithium. Lithium is one of the first-generation mood stabilizers, but its mechanism of use is still truly unknown even after all these years. It is not often used anymore, and honestly, I've only seen it in a handful of patients, and most of them have been on it for years and don't tolerate some of the other medications. Lithium has a very narrow range where it is therapeutic before it becomes toxic, affecting kidneys and thyroid. It can be considered neurotoxic and in some cases can be life-threatening. According to Shawn, at one point he was rushed to the ER after getting lithium and was given a foul liquid to help. The only thing I can think of here is perhaps he was given activated charcoal to help him throw up. Most commonly, its supportive treatment is fluids and airway management. From here, Shawn graduated from Second Chance School in June of 1996, which sounds like an alternative education school that can be found in some areas. Where I grew up, we had an alternative school that was mostly formed for those who often found themselves in trouble or missing too much school. This really sounds the same. Shawn reports that at the time, everyone in his program seemed to be on probation and was unsure if that was coincidence or a qualifier of that specific program. That his class that graduated consisted of only a handful of students. 2 of the 3 girls were visibly pregnant. Credits for the school were earned just by showing up, though they did get handouts covering basic subjects to complete. After graduation, he went to the California Culinary Academy, but only attended one semester before dropping out. At this time, he was living on his own. Well, with his girlfriend at the time, Lauren, in downtown San Francisco. Living, in his words, quote, "in the heart of the Tenderloin district, a truly economically, socially, and even spiritually dilapidated ghetto, where we paid $800 a month to live in a rundown studio apartment with a single cracked window overlooking a grimy alleyway," end quote. He joked he had to weave through crack smoke and hookers just to get to school. At 17, Shawn was convicted of assault and sentenced to 3 years in the California Youth Authority, or CYA. Shawn calls the CYA Gladiator School. During his time there, he participated in 2 race riots and stabbed a fellow inmate, though he reports charges were eventually dropped for the stabbing. And on his 21st birthday, he walked out of CYA. According to the world's most evil prisoners, the CYA at one time held 10,000 wards. Reports showed that it wasn't just punitive, often worse than other adult prisons in the area. Kids were held in dark cells. They were living in unsanitary environments. That tear gas was often thrown in their cells as punishment, and they were left in their cells for a while before being removed. The CYA suffered from chronic understaffing, one guard to 60 or 70 youths at a time. One man who did a gang assessment on various prisons in the area said that the CYA was a training ground and a breeding ground for gangs and gang members. Shawn returned to Sacramento and spoke with his girlfriend at the time, Jenny, who was pregnant with their child. The concerns of the streets, coupled with an uncontrolled heroin addiction, pushed them out of Sacramento. They decided to move to Oregon to be near Jenny's mother. But before they left, in 2006, Shawn had more charges, which led to another stay in the Sacramento County Jail. While he was there, he informed that his mother had OD'd and died. and that same year, his only daughter, Riot, was born. Upon release, he went to a friend's, Gothic Chris, in Santa Cruz. Together, the two drank on the Lost Boys Bridge before getting heroin and heading back to Chris's apartment. When Chris couldn't find a vein, Shawn helped. Then, in an intoxicated state, watched as his friend OD'd right in front of him. Finally, the trio moved to Oregon in 2007.
I was writing all the crazy stuff down today, actually, before this call. Spent the afternoon writing some stuff, and I was thinking to myself, like, I kept asking myself, like, should I just fucking just gloss over this and just pretend this part didn't happen? Should I just be like, nah, we don't need to talk about that crazy shit. We're just gonna go from point A, we're gonna end up in point D, and forget, B and C, because really it has nothing to do with the actual story, the actual crime. I shouldn't say the story, the crime in itself. It really is like a completely separate thing. You know what I mean? Like, it just happened. I think it doesn't add anything to the story.
Yeah, but the story isn't just the one crime, it's your entire life. And the crime.
Yeah, here's the thing, right? Is that I think that I don't tell. I've had a lot of crazy shit happen to me in my life, right? And there's some things I just don't talk about. For some, for obvious reasons. Others because I choose not to, because this may be like kind of a pussy mentality. Maybe it's because like I don't want to come off sounding crazy and shit. Even though I know for a fact, like this shit, it happened. It's real. I don't care what the fuck anybody tells me. You can't.
That would be great.
Yeah, math a little off, dude. Just a little bit, but I'll get it. I'll get it in gear.
Then we skip to about 2011 or 12, where Shawn received his first case in Oregon. He took steel-toed boots to a man named Robbie, breaking his orbital socket and beating him until he lost consciousness. With dozens of witnesses, he was given assault, too, after taking a plea deal offered by the DA. He was sentenced to 3 years at minimum security prison, Shutter Creek Correctional Institution. Here, he met Forrest Martin. About halfway through his bit, Forrest came in on a chain. He was immediately considered a quote-unquote bad dude, as he was associated with rapists, rats, and dropouts, sitting at their tables, hanging out with them in the yard. As such, Forrest and Shawn never really crossed paths. Shawn says of this time that he simply kept his nose clean and paroled in August of 2014. The first time Shawn spoke to Forrest was out in the streets after they both paroled. Upon parole, his father came up from California and paid for an apartment for 3 months, as well as getting some furniture and a little money for food and clothing. One day, Shawn was standing outside the apartment building, smoking a cigarette, when Forrest walked towards him, asking for a light. Shawn told him to get fucked, that he knew who he was. Forrest left quietly that day. Later, Shawn found out Forrest was dating a woman who lived a few doors down from Shawn. The two, as a result, would periodically run into each other, but never really spoke. Eventually, he found out the woman that Forrest was seeing was in her 50s and had MS. He needed a walker for assistance and had a speech impediment. A few of the other neighbors began complaining that they had either witnessed or overheard Forrest beating the woman and forcing her to panhandle to get extra cash after he drank and smoked away her disability checks. There were rumors that she was even forced to prostitute herself out, but Shawn was unable to substantiate these. One night, after coming home from drinking, Shawn overheard Forrest yelling at the woman as he passed the apartment. So Shawn stopped at the door and beat on it. The woman opened the door, and Shawn said he threatened to pull Forrest out of the apartment and, quote, beat the ever-living brakes off him if he even imagined doing something so unforgivable, end quote. She instead demanded Shawn leave, and he did, feeling so ashamed for stepping in. Soon after this, Shawn lost his apartment. While he says that he looked for honest work, applying everywhere, including fast food joints and gas stations, he was denied everything. Luckily, he met a woman named Danny shortly before his eviction. She was an underground tattoo artist working out of a motel where she and her blue-nosed pit bull lived. When she found out about his eviction, she demanded he move in. He didn't want to be a burden, so said he would only do it if he could help find a way to pay expenses. At his end, for the honest route, he made a phone call, and within hours had half an ounce of crystal meth and some quote-unquote walking around money. Now that he was moving this route, he was able to move back out of Danny's within weeks and into a friend's house. His friend had also done time, but was off parole and needed help with rent. The dope wasn't an issue as long as he kept business hours, and these are apparently standard between respectable dealers and are 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. No tweakers are allowed to linger. Shawn goes on to explain the 10 to 10 rule is pretty standard issue in prison and was established way before he started doing time out of basic respect. For months, they lived seamlessly together. Eventually, Shawn left, saying he moved to another buddy's house, and his house ended up being basically a trap house that did not adhere to business hours. Shawn was shooting crystal meth at this point and, quote, running as hard as I ever had, end quote. It was here that who should walk through the door but one night but Forrest. Now, this next part is impossible to say in any other way than his words, so this is all written verbatim from his letters he sent.
I was thinking, I think I'm just going to give you I'm just going to tell you like the sane, basic, standard issue version of what happened that night. I'm going to keep everything real with you, of course.
Yeah.
But there are some things that happened that night that are a little too unbelievable, and I'm not even really comfortable talking about them. So I'll probably leave that part out for the podcast sake. You know what I mean? Because I think for the podcast, people would be listening. They're like, this dude's a fucking he's a maniac. This dude is obviously tripping. And if he's tripping that hard at this point, then who the fuck else knows what else he's tripping about for the rest of the story?
Listen, a lot of
So
times in true crime, it's like you listen to it and you're like, that could never happen. And there's this proof, like video proof of things sometimes. And you're like, if that was in a movie, you would say that's too far. But it happens in real life all the time.
It does happen.
But it's whatever you're comfortable with.
I know that now.
I don't know what time it was when Forrest showed up that night. 1 a.m., 2 a.m. It was late, but I recognized Forrest immediately. What are you doing here? You should know better than to come around here, I say. Then I heard a drunken voice of a man who owned the house I was staying with erupt from behind me. Sick boy, these are my friends. Let 'em in, he said. I turned and looked at the man patiently. Your friends? You know Forrest is a rat, right? And a sex offender, I said. I expected my words to have an effect. Instead, I saw a rich lacquer of denial gleam in his bloodshot eyes. What? That's a bunch of bullshit. I've known Forrest for years. He ain't no fucking sex offender. Forrest, get in here, he said. I let the pair slip past me and shut the door. Once they were seated comfortably on the couch, I quietly approached the man whose house it was. Can I talk with you real quick? Privately, I said. He nodded, grabbed the bottle of whiskey we had been drinking, and led me down the hallway to his bedroom. Closing the door for privacy, I took a seat beside his bed. Although I was drunk and high, I believe that I am able to drag the heart of our conversation from the murky depths of my polluted memories of that night. Look, I know you don't like Forrest, that you have a problem with him, he said. More than a problem, he's a sex offender, I said. He's not, he said. He is, I said. Who told you that? He asked. Nobody needed to. I did time with him, I said. So? He said. So I know, I said. Have you seen the paperwork on him? He said. Don't need to. I saw him sitting at the table with sex offenders, eating with them, talking with them. It's all who he kicked it with there, I said. That doesn't mean shit, he said. Means he's a sex offender. Or a simp, I said. Look, I don't know about being a simp, but believe me when I tell you that Forrest is no fucking sex offender. I've known that dude my entire life. We grew up together, he said. He's dating that handicapped chick, the one with cerebral palsy, I said. I know, he said. He beats her, I said. What? No, I'm sure he just. I mean, sure, if she comes at him, he'll push her off him, but. He said, she's in a walker, I said. Look, I've known that crazy bitch most of my life, too, and if she wanted to leave Forrest, she fucking would by now. But she loves him. Either way, it's none of our business, he said. I changed tactics. He's a rat, I said. He's not, he said. He is, I said. Who'd he rat on, he said. My homeboy in county, I said. We were there a while ago. Did anybody handle it, he said. Not yet, I said. Sounds like bullshit, or somebody would have handled it by now, he said. I shook my head, drinking. He's a bad dude, I said. Sick boy, I respect you. So, right now I'm asking you to respect me and respect my house. Forrest is my friend, and he's welcome here, he said. At this point, I'd been high for days. I was crashing hard. The alcohol wasn't helping. All I wanted was sleep. I was tired of arguing. I wouldn't do anything, but if he gets stupid, crosses that line, I'm scraping him, I said. He smiled. That's fair, he agreed. He stayed up for another hour or so, smoking, drinking, talking, until I could take no more of the world around me. I'm going to bed, I said, stumbling across the hallway. I found an empty room and went to sleep. Voices splashed in the darkness, disrupting my gentle tread towards unconsciousness. I laid in bed listening to them, echoey barks of unstilled conversation spilling down the hallway, broken only by brief but rabid snarls of laughter nipping at my patience. Several minutes passed before I growled in frustration, rose from the bed's warmth embrace, and tossed myself down the empty hallway towards the noise. As I entered the living room, I saw Forrest and his friend sitting on a small couch, drinks clutched in their grubby hands. Alcohol flushed their cheeks and ignited their voices in an explosive level. They didn't even notice me standing there until I spoke. Hey, I said, startling them, remembering that I promised my friend earlier that evening. I diluted my tone before I continued. Listen, I understand you guys are partying, but I'm trying to sleep and it's like 4 a.m. Will you please keep it down? I watched them nod conceptively, pivoted and headed back towards the bedroom. I had made it about halfway down the hallway when I overheard them snickering. Can you guys please keep it down? One of them aped a vocal character that I was supposed to be. I'm tired. I stood, frozen, listening to their quieted laughter. They were mocking me like a bratty children, repeating me and making fun of what I had just politely asked of them. More hushed giggling spoiled the silence of the hallway. Unfucking believable. I spun around and stormed back into the living room, stopping inches short of where they sat on the couch. That funny? I seethed, practically ebullient. Get up. Neither one of them made a move. Stand the fuck up. I yelled, kicking Forrest's friend hard in the shin with the ball of my bare foot. What's the matter? Not so funny anymore? I saw a 1-gallon jug of water sitting on the floor. I picked it up. Seeing it was more than halfway full, I flicked the plastic cup cap off with my thumb and upended it over the tops of their heads, drenching both of them with water. Not knowing what else to do to instigate them into a fight, I flung the empty jug as hard as I could at Forrest's friend, watching the almost weightless plastic container bounce harmlessly off his chest. Standing there, I glared down at them. They hid their faces, 2 silent, dripping wet statues, completely cowed by my temper. I spoke evenly. You fucking punks, I said. If I hear one more peep out of either of you tonight, I swear to God that I will chop off your heads and bury you both in the backyard. Do you hear me? Crickets. I turned to go, leaving them sitting in their puddles. The following afternoon was beautiful outside, the perfect summer's day. I was sitting with a friend of mine on a picnic bench on the shoulder of the path that led down to a small strip of an empty beach. We were enjoying a couple of beers when I noticed someone in the distance. He was alone, walking in our direction, heading to a little convenience store that stood across the rural road from where we were drinking. As he neared, I began to recognize his punchy, slim shoulder shape, his slow, shuffling gait. It soon became unmistakable. who it was drifting towards us, that bright summer sun. Forrest. My friend, noticing that my attention was wandering from the circle of our conversation, he twisted in his seat to see what I was looking at. Who's that? He asked. Forrest, I said. Who? A rapist, I clarified. What I recall most clearly as I watched for sauntering down the open road that day was how he was smiling. It seemed to cross his face with the prideful confidence of a man who didn't have a care in the world, a man who could get away with anything, a man who already had. I remember thinking then about the kind of man that Forrest was. Woman beater, coward, rat, rapist. How he was not a man at all. He was shameless, smiling. He was dangerous, walking free. He was a fucking monster. That's who he was. And I thought about the things that he had done, the cold reality of them, and what that actually meant. He held women, maybe children, down, and forced himself onto them, into them. And as they fought, as they struggled, and pleaded for and cried for him to stop, he didn't feel empathy or shame. He didn't feel like showing them any mercy, because all he felt was excitement when he looked down at their faces and saw the rawness of their tears and pain. His visceral reaction was a hard dick. That's what he was. I also thought about my homeboy, who was locked up in the county facing another charge on top of the cases that he was already fighting because Forrest had snitched on him. How the bright sunshine that was warming for a smiling face right then was not on my homeboys, and probably would not be for quite some time. And he was just getting away with it, and would keep getting away with it, over and over and over again, because who was going to stop him? I watched him disappear inside that little convenience store across the street, that big smug smile decorating his satisfied face. And I realized that Forrest Martin truly was a man without a care in the world, and that if nobody else was going to do anything about that, I was. Recalling a conversation I had 2 weeks earlier with a friend of mine has exhumed for my dusty coffin of a memory. You know, my family has that property just down the road, he said. Your dad's place, I said. Yeah, but I'm staying there now, too, along with my old lady, so you're welcome there any time, he said. Appreciate that. How's your dad? I asked. He's doing okay. Still down a bit since he got sick, but he's still doing his things, fixing up old bikes and riding when he can. He's eating a lot of pills, which helps with the pain, and he drinks till he blacks out almost every night now. So nothing's changed, I said, and we laughed at that. He won't do treatment. Says he doesn't want to spend the time he's got left locked up in the hospital room, going bald with tubes sticking out everywhere. You gotta respect that, I said. He's stubborn, he said. He's tough, I said. He's crazy. The good kind, I said. My friend smiled. Growing up with my dad's brothers, used to tell me stories about when we were younger, about my dad putting shotguns in people's mouths and making them dig their own graves, he said. It was my turn to smile. I've heard those stories. Can't understand why anybody would dig their own grave. Why would you help somebody kill you? I tell him. Tell you what, put a gun to my head and hand me a shovel. I'm taking a swing, I said. 100%, he said. Makes you wonder how many bodies your old man's really got buried back there, I said. On the property? More than I'd like to count, he said. He looked at me then as if he were suddenly considering something. You know, Sick, if you ever needed to get rid of something that you didn't want anyone to find out about, you know you can count on me and my family's property. It's always open to you, he said. I finished my beer and said thanks. I'll keep that in mind. Okay, now we are going back into the day Shawn sees Forrest going to the convenience store, and he decided he needed to put Forrest down. I know there's a lot of what I said and he said, but that's how he wrote it. And the reason that I have to do it that way is Shawn doesn't give any names. He won't do that to prevent implications. He does have a co-defendant and can be looked up if you really wanted to. But Shawn runs off of prison code. So even though his co-defendant rolled on him, he's not going to talk about him. He won't name him. To the point that all he says is he's a quote-unquote friend because he doesn't know what to call him. So I'm going to go ahead and respect that decision. I know that might sound odd to some, but again, it's part of his code. I'm doing an episode based on the information of someone incarcerated, and I'm not trying to lose the people that I talk to by ousting a single person. I think that's kind of silly. All right, we're going back to his written version. I gave my friend the chance to leave, sever himself from the whole fucked up situation. I told him what time it was. Listen, I'm putting him down, punching his ticket. If you don't want anything to do with it, dip out now, no hard feelings, and I'll just catch up with you later, I said. Sick boy, you know me, brother. I'm always down to ride. I'm not going anywhere, he said. I can still hear his voice crisp and clear as spring water trickling from the well of my memory to this day. I'm not going anywhere, he said. I'm always down to ride. Huh. I know now that my most reckless, pernicious mistake was actually believing this. Believing him. I know of an old bomb camp that was hidden deep within the brush off to the side of a narrow trail that wandered its way down to the small sandy beach. I asked my friend to wait for me there while I crossed the street to collect Forrest. Luckily, I caught up with him right before he entered the store. Forrest, I said, hanging my best plastic smile across my face like a cheap costume jewelry. He turned and looked at me, and I quickly raised both of my hands in front of me, palms facing outward, showing him that I wasn't a threat. Listen, I just want to apologize. Last night dumping water on you guys, talking shit. I was way out of line, I said. He regarded me silently. His face was stubbed and unreadable. I took a gentle step forward, not wanting to alarm him but needing to gain his trust. Why don't you let me make it up to you? Come on, man. I feel like a dick. I know I was wrong. Look, what are you about to buy? I said. At first I wasn't sure if he was going to respond as he just stared at me. Like if he studied me long and hard enough, he would crack the code hidden within the complexity of my sudden sincerity. I was annoyed, but not surprised, by the depth of his suspicion. Some beer, he said timidly, obviously still wary of me. Beer? Bro, I just bought a bunch of tall boys. They're across the street, I said, indicating the way I had come. His gaze flickered in that direction. What kind? He said. My smile warmed genuinely at his first little nibble of interest. Old Ian Camel. Blood of the white trash patriot. Why don't you come over and crack one with me? Let me at least start making up for last night, I said. As he considered my offer, I furtively glanced around the small parking lot where we were standing. Aside from the two of us, it was completely deserted. Okay, I heard him say. Finally. Forrest followed me across the street, and we disappeared down the small sandy trail. I remember thinking to myself, this is it for him. These are his last moments. Accompanying me back to the old bum camp will be the last bad decision that he ever makes. As we entered the cramped privacy of the abandoned bum camp, I saw that my friend was already seated on a fallen log, patiently waiting for us, with a brown paper sack resting between his feet. Forrest claimed the spot beside him, and I spread my jacket out on the ground so not be sitting on dirt. Forrest stripped himself of his backpack, and beers were passed around. As the three of us began to drink, I held an internal discussion. Let him enjoy this, I thought. Let him smile with the warm sun on his face and have his last cold beer. Because this is his last stop. He's not going to be leaving this place. So, just for these last moments, let him have his final bout of happiness. He'll pay his price soon enough. So that is what I did. For the next 30 minutes, the three of us talked, joked, and laughed, until Forrest finished his final swallow of beer and started stuffing the empties into his backpack. Are you done? I said. Yeah, with that one, he said. No, you're done. Stand up, I said, rising to my feet. Huh? He said, confused. Still not recognizing or understanding the danger he was in. I said, stand the fuck up, moving towards him. That's when it registered. The surprise on his face quickly flushed to the fearful panic as he suddenly realized what he was doing there. Why he had been invited to that place. Lured there by me. But the dawning of his horrible understanding came too late. I moved much too fast. Oh shit. was all he had time to say before the tip of my steel-toed boot connected viciously with his chin, sending him stumbling, staggering backwards, falling hard onto his hands and knees in front of the fallen log, splitting his chin wide open, spilling his blood. He was dazed, confused, and I landed my next blow before he was able to recover. Another steel-toed boot against the side of his face, a devastating hit that sent him sprawling face first into the ground. I fell on top of him, hammering him with my fist. He fought to raise his hands in a feeble and desperate attempt to defend his face, to shield himself from my attack. But it did not matter. I was feral, rabid. My fist exploded against his temple. I felt the soft structure of his body collapse into rubble of unconsciousness. His breathing became a broken rattle. Bright blood gushed from several gashes and wounds on his shattered face, drowning the dirt beneath him, mingling with it, making it mud. I looked to my friend, still seated on the fallen log above us. "He's done," I said, as I awkwardly maneuvered Forrest's limp body onto his back. I assessed the damage. It was bad, but nothing he wouldn't recover from. I searched the immediate area with wild eyes and spotted what I was looking for. "Hand me that rock," I said. What my friend fetched from the bushes was not a rock, but a broken chunk of cinder block. He handed it to me, and I knelt down straddling Forrest midsection, gripping the piece of cinder block tightly in my right hand. I was surprised to find the horrid look of Forrest staring up at me. "Good, you're awake," I said. His teary eyes leapt from side to side, striking against the cage of their sockets. I slapped him. "Look at me," I said. He did. "I want you to look at me, motherfucker, because my face is going to be the last one you ever see. You are done here. You are a rapist. You are a rat. You are a piece of shit. And you are going to die here in the dirt, where you belong. When you get to hell, and you'll be there shortly, and you meet the devil, I want you to tell him that Sick Boy was the one who sent you there, and you tell that motherfucker that I'll see him soon." And with that, I lifted the piece of cinder block I was holding high in the air and brought it down hard on Forrest's face. I heard and felt his jaw crush. Saw he retreated back into unconsciousness. But I continued pummeling him over and over again, switching hands when I was winded, wanting to rid the world of this evil monster, more than willing to become one myself. I watched his face begin to disintegrate, heard the rhythmic popping splat of raw meat and snapping of bones. And then I saw my friend suddenly on his feet. "That's enough," he said. Taken back by his unexpected outburst, I ceased my temptress assault and looked up at my friend from the saddle of Forrest's belly. He appeared drained of color. More than that, he looked utterly stricken. I allowed my weapon to fall to my side. "What?" "I said that's enough," he repeated. "Look at him, man. He's done, bro. He's had enough." "Enough?" I said, not quite understanding. "What are you talking about?" "He's still alive," I said. "I know! Let's just get the fuck out of here," he said, and made to leave. I couldn't believe what was happening. He was actually attempting to flee. I shot to my feet and blocked his exit. "Where the fuck do you think you're going?" I said. His eyes dropped to the blood-spattered cinder block that I was still clutching and then darted back up to my own. "Bro, I don't want to be here for this," he said. "Little late for that, don't you think? I already told you what time it was with this motherfucker, and you said you weren't going anywhere. You had your chance to leave. And now you want to bail? Well, fuck that. That's not going to happen." In fact, I reached down with my free hand, retrieving a piece of broken branch that was laying at my feet, and pushed it into one of his hands. "Put a hole in that motherfucker," I said. He paled. "I don't want to do that," he said. "It's not about what you want anymore. That's what's going to happen. Leaving is not an option for you anymore. You said you were down to ride, so—" I pointed to Forrest's unconscious body. "Ride, motherfucker." I said, having no other choice other than trying to fight his way past me. My friend sullenly approached Forrest's body. He knelt quietly beside him, quickly stabbed him 3 times in the neck. The broken end of the branch barely punctured his skin. He tossed the blunt weapon into the bushes behind him and glared at me. "There! I did it. Is that good enough?" he said. I realized the gruesome reality of our situation may have completely fractured him. It was the man I had been sitting with at the picnic bench less than an hour ago. Vanished was all that bravado. and in its place I found the pale black cheeked look of shock of a little boy who was horrified at what he was witnessing. I told him to sit down and watched as he wordlessly reclaimed his spot on the log. For my friend's sake and mine, now I decided to cover up the gory side of Forrest's ruptured face. I gathered a large, filthy, white, thick cotton blanket that I had spotted earlier hiding in the shadows of a bush in my arms and carried it over to where Forrest was laying. I draped it across his face, covering him from the neck up, muting the labored, wet crackling of his sound of his snoring. I repositioned myself on top of him, straddling his chest, and then I slid my hands beneath the blanket and began to choke him. I squeezed with all my strength, strangling him until I felt his body lightly convulse beneath me and deflate entirely into stiff stillness. I removed my hands from around his throat and looked up at my friend. "There," I said, when I suddenly felt him jerk and gasp beneath the blanket, interrupting my thought, startling me. "Jesus," I said, watching his chest heave, hearing the dampened rattle of his breath. "Motherfucker won't die," I said, a little shocked considering the damage I had done. Although he remained entombed in the dark crypt of unconsciousness, he was still very much alive. Once again, I grabbed a chunk of cinder block and brought it down as hard as I could on top of his head. Crunch. I hit him again and again. Crunch, splat, and again, until my friend returned to his feet. "Man, I don't want to be here for this," he said. "Sit the fuck down," I said, pointing to the fallen log with the blood-smeared cinder block. Without uttering another word, my friend tentatively reclaimed his seat. Returning my attention to Forrest, I immediately continued my tempestuous barrage. Crunch, splat, shattered jerking gas, crunch, flat. I bludgeoned him over and over again until there could not have been much of anything left of the decimated face hidden underneath the blood-soaked blanket. Finally, I rose. "Help me," I said. We wrapped a filthy blanket around the rest of him and dragged him deep in the bushes so that he was not out in the open, hiding him in the leaves and shadows. "Wait here. I'll be right back. I'm going to a buddy's place down the road. Shouldn't be more than 20 minutes, I said. I cleaned myself off as best as I could, lit a cigarette, and got out of there. When my buddy answered the door, I could tell he had been sleeping. "What's up? What time is it?" he asked. "Early. Listen, I need a favor," I said. "Jesus, is that blood?" he asked. "Yeah, listen, I need to take you up on your offer," I said. "What offer?" he asked. "You told me that if I ever needed to use your property to get rid of something that needed never to be found, I could. Well, I have something to get rid of. Like now," I said. "Are you serious?" he asked. I raised my hands so he could see them. They were stained in blood. "Do I look serious?" I asked. "Okay, all right, just hold on a sec," he says, and shut the door on me, and it was several minutes before he returned. He was holding a pipe and a lighter. "Sorry, man, but my dad said no." "But do you want to come in and smoke weed?" he asked. I just stared at him, not believing what I had just heard. "What?" I said. "A bowl. It's good green," he said, offering me the pipe. "What the fuck are you talking about? What do you mean your dad said no? Bro, you said if I ever needed to use your property, it wasn't going to be a problem. You told me that." I said. I know. What do you want me to do?" "I'm sorry, man, but my dad said no." With that, I turned around and was walking away, back towards my old bum camp where my friend and Forrest were both waiting for me. "So what do you want to do now?" my friend asked. I glanced at Forrest's body wrapped up in a blanket like a human burrito. "Push him deeper into the bushes. We'll have to come back for him later tonight when the sun's down. We'll just cover him up for now," I said. It was getting later in the morning, and already the little beach below us, there was a family that was doing some early morning clamming, heading in our direction. "Come on, help me cover him up," I said. Together we piled branches and debris on top of him, arranging the camouflage and debris so that it was as natural as possible. Now, if anyone stumbled back here, they would miss seeing his body with a cursory inspection. It was going to have to do. We needed to get out of there. We sneaked back to the trail and were heading for the street when I stopped, suddenly remembering his backpack that Forrest had been wearing. "Dude, where's his backpack?" I asked. "Huh? I stashed it behind the log when you were done." "Don't worry, nobody's going to find it." I immediately turned around and started stalking back the way we came. "Hey, where are you going?" "Just meet me back at the house," I yelled. Back at the campsite, I found a hidden backpack right away. As I was about to leave, I heard a noise coming from the bushes where we had stashed Forrest's body. It was faint, but it was definitely there, like an oddly pitched whining and gurgling sound. No fucking way, I thought to myself as I slowly approached the sound, hearing it become more distinct. I stood at the foot of the bushes, holding my breath. There was no mistaking it now. The funny noise that I was hearing was the sound of Forrest's ruptured breathing. Somehow he was still alive. No fucking way, I said out loud this time. Stepping into the shadowy depths of the bushes where we had hidden him, I quickly began to clear all the debris away until I could find the dingy white of the blanket. I removed the portion that was stained dark red with blood, where it covered his face, or what was left of it. Then I unwrapped the blanket, revealing something I barely recognized as human, a grotesque mass of broken flesh that was somehow still miraculously struggling to breathe. But the ragged breaths that were escaping it were raspy and wet, the last cringes of a splattered life. "You really don't want to die," I spoke to him softly, as I reached down and gently arranged his broken head so that the soft belly of his throat, slick and bright with blood, was vulnerable and exposed. Standing, I braced myself against the overhanging branch of a tree for balance and placed my foot on his throat, letting my entire weight fall on top of it, effectively crushing his airway. Leveraging myself with the tree branch, I calmly bounced up and down that way on top of him, smashing out the last cinder of his life like I was grounding out a cigarette, but beneath my foot. It took several minutes, but at last I watched as his left arm suddenly jerked into the air, spasmed silently, and finally fell. Forrest Martin was finally dead. I stepped down from the dented curb of flesh that I had been standing on and carefully rewrapped the disintegrated mess of his face, covering him once more, shoving him into the shadow, swallowing the mouth of the bushes. From there, Shawn walked back to the trap house he was staying, finding his friend was already there, along with others that he wasn't acquainted with. Through the grapevine, Shawn had heard that his friend had already told his girlfriend what happened that day. Later in the evening, he gathered his friend and told him it was time to go. Together, the duo went to the empty streets, back down to the beach, to the shadowy nest of the deserted bum camp. Forrest's body was wrapped and waiting. Shawn had brought a length of crab pot rope, which he used to secure the blanket to the body. Then the duo hauled Forrest into the ocean and watched as he sank. After the body was submerged, they wandered to the little convenience store across the street, getting a couple of beers, and then the two men parted ways. The friend went back to the trap house, and Shawn decided to walk the streets, laying down in a secluded area to rest. When he woke, he got a few more beers, pounded them, and returned to the trap house himself. There, he proceeded to go through Forrest's backpack, removing some items, and here I assume monetary items, though I never thought enough to get clarity. Shawn changed out of his clothes, and he went to the backyard, placing everything in a pile, and ignited it. Sipping on a beer as the pile burns, a police cruiser drove by. Stopping and asking if he had a permit to burn, of course the answer is no. So the next question was more of a, "Hey, why are you drinking?" type of question, to which Shawn says that at this time the police officer said he was on parole and he wasn't allowed to drink, and the officer contacts Shawn's PO and inquires as to who's inside the house. Shawn states that he doesn't know, after which Shawn's ordered to sit down and the officer knocks on the door. The owner answers and asks to speak to the officer in private, to which they do at the edge of the property. An exchange is given, and both look at Shawn. The officer mumbles into his keyed up mic, and minutes later, the cruisers are in full force. His friend, that was an accomplice, and that guy's girlfriend end up in a group of people sitting near Shawn before he is ultimately stood and arrested. At first, the arrest is for parole violation. His friend and girlfriend are subsequently cuffed and placed into their own cruisers. Then all parties vacate, and Shawn is driven, but not to Coos County Jail, where he'd go for a violation immediately. Instead, he's taken into a small parking lot in the North Bend Police Station, into a tiny room, and seated the opposite of two detectives. A camera is placed in the corner of the room, and the detectives waste no time asking if he knew a man named Forrest. He says he knew him in passing. They did time together. Then Shawn is told of the murder, to which he says, quote, "That's crazy," end quote. Then asks if he's going to jail or if he can leave. The detectives say they spoke with his PO, and so Shawn asks why he's in Bend for a Coos Bay issue. They press about Forrest, and Shawn denies knowing anything, on repeat. Shawn says jail or let him go, and the detectives press and request to swab his hands. At this point, there's no warrant, so Shawn declines. One of them leaves and returns a few minutes later, shutting the door and stating, quote, "Paul says go ahead and do it anyway," end quote. Paul, being Paul Frazier, the Coos Bay County District Attorney at the time. I didn't have to request this. Shawn knew I was going to ask who the fuck is Paul, and he supplied that information immediately. The DNA swab kit is in hand. Shawn is rear handcuffed at this point, and they are pinned against him, and he is swabbed while Shawn repeats, quote, "I do not consent to this," end quote, directly into the camera, pretty much on repeat. Again, I don't need to ask for clarification. Shawn knew I was going to ask this too. At trial, Shawn is informed that there is no recording that could be found of the initial interview, and under oath, two detectives swore Shawn did not protest. But again, they didn't have a warrant, and they do have the DNA results after. Again, this man tells it like it is, the good and the bad. He doesn't make himself sound like an angel. So I'm curious how this didn't get brought up in trial, the efficacy of the information and how it's admissible in court. But I have thoughts. So does Shawn. You'll understand more when we speak on his court-assigned attorney. Until then, let's move on. After the DNA sample, he is indeed taken to Coos County Jail. There he's placed in segregation, and according to him, this is when time moves slowly. Jail is much more boring than prison from Shawn's point of view. A small selection of books in the library, all of which he read in the first 10 months, awaiting trial. There are no weights or equipment for exercising, and with nothing else to do, it's body weight only. On to his public defender. According to Shawn, they were unhappily referred to as public pretenders, only out to make deals and not actually defend their clients. Shawn being one of them. During his 10 months before trial, he met his lawyer 5 times to discuss the case, and whose strategy was to blame his friend. Of course, Shawn refused. He's old school in many ways, like I just said, and actually not snitching or naming others, he's not going to do. Again, I've mentioned it before. You can look up the guy who rolled on him. That's the guy who I keep referring to as friend. Therefore, at trial, Shawn felt he had to take the stand, which is normally not great. Shawn claimed to know nothing of the murder, but the lawyer essentially stated during closing that he was trying to cover for the real people who had committed the murder, essentially saying that Shawn knew about the murder and negated his whole testimony. So again, I asked him, why he took the stand, because like I had just said, he really doesn't fare well most of the time for people to take the stand. And so this is what Shawn has to say about that. So there are some things that I would like to clear up. There were a lot of lies and truths also that were told from the parapet of the witness stand during my trial. I was one of those liars, but there were others there as well. I would like to address one of those liars now, or rather, a story that he told. But before I do, allow me to tell you a story of my own. Years ago, a friend of mine died. His name was T. T and I had been partying the night before, and I awoke to discover him dead on the floor. At the time, I was devastated, and a rusting anchor of guilt poisoned and weighed heavily on my well-being. I was the one who was with him the night he died, encouraging him to stay up with me and keep partying when he obviously wanted only to pass out. This, tragically, is not the first friend that I have lost this way. But T is the one I will tell you about, or more, what happened in the wake of his sudden death. After T's funeral, his family invited me to temporarily stay with his ailing mother at the house where he died. At the family's insistence that this arrangement would be great benefit to T's mom. Anxiously, I agreed. T had no children, but he did leave behind a very pregnant and lovable pit bull named Sobe. I puttered around the house doing what things I knew how to do, cooking and some light cleaning and heavy drinking, and being as affable a guest as I could during her grieving. Sobe, especially in this last case, was an enormous help. She was always bouncing happily about and trying to squirm onto laps despite her growing girth. She was a furnace of affection, radiating love. Proudly, after a month or so had gone by, with T's mom's permission and blessing, I was allowed to, unofficially, adopt her. Sobe became my dog. The day came when Sobe's belly could grow no bigger, and she gave birth to her first puppy, on the same spot on the floor where I had found T dead not 2 months earlier. After her first came her second, then her third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, and ninth, and a surprise 10th and 11th. We were in shock at the 12th and 13th. At this point, in delirium. I had never heard of one dog giving birth to so many puppies outside of a Disney movie. We, Sobe, myself, and T's mom, carefully collected this perfect baker's dozen of bludgeoning joy and heaped them gently against the welcoming warmth of their mama's belly. That night we celebrated. We didn't have any steaks, so ground hamburger and bacon for Sobe, chocolate chip pancakes for T's mom, and she had an insatiable sweet tooth, and a fifth of dark spice rum for me. I may have had a slight dependency. And for the first time in a long while, since T's passing, I think, all three of us were genuinely happy. Time went on and the puppy's eyes opened up, and soon they were furry flurries, first stumbling, then streaking about the house. I found it impossible to name them all. I also knew that it would be impossible for me to keep them all. As much as I would have loved to, it was simply downright impractical. Even poor Sobe, who was a perfect mom, in my opinion, became noticeably sore from all the nursing, and the puppy's rambunctious, ubiquitous presence began to feather even her patience. I remember her rolling herself free from a nursing pile of puppies when I opened the front door to leave for somewhere, in a desperate hope of tagging along, just to have a short break. On several occasions, so something needed to be done, I finally made the decision to call the ASPCA and ask for help. They were wonderful. The next day, 2 representatives showed up on our doorstep, and like attending angels, they dewormed all 13 puppies for free, then generously offered to take 7 of our 13 puppies, with the vigorous promise of finding them all good homes. Only a little skeptical, I asked what would happen if they couldn't find all 7 of them good homes, and they sweetly replied, "Then we'll adopt them ourselves." Well, that was good enough for me. A little sad to see those little puppies go and have our brood dwindled down by half. We, Sobe and I, like to believe, were also a little relieved. 13, after all, is not a litter. It's a herd. So our temporary but much beloved family shrank to 9. T's mom, myself, Sobe, and the 6 remaining puppies. More time sneaked by, and as the puppies continued to grow, I found 2 of them loving homes. One particularly cold winter night, T's mom was fast asleep in her bed in the living room, and Sobe was conked out on her usual spot in the living room, and the pups were exerting their last bouts of playfulness for the evening on the floor beside her, when an unexpected knock at the door surprised everyone, and chaos ensued. Taking a hold of Sobe's collar, I opened the door, only a fraction to see who it was. It was my friend, Michelle. Grinning beneath the porch light, she was holding a giant case of beer in one hand, and a thick leash was tightly wrapped around her other. The other end of the leash sat Tyler, Michelle's massive midnight black wolf dog, with a head the size of a watermelon and 2 ears that jutted straight up like 2 large slices of pizza. Standing beside Tyler, looking somewhat intoxicated, was a man I didn't recognize. Rosy-cheeked herself, Michelle hoisted the unopened case of beer with an effort and asked if I wanted to drink. I told them to go around through the side gate and meet me on the back porch. Shutting the front door, I spent several minutes settling everyone down again, assuring them that everything was okay. Luckily, the brief bristling of sudden commotion caused by Michelle's arrival was not a significant amount of clamor to rouse T's mom from her bedroom. Eventually, I slipped through the sliding glass door of the kitchen and joined the party already taking place outside. About an hour had passed, And between the three of us, because Tyler wasn't drinking, Michelle, myself, and I don't remember her friend's name, let's call him Ben. Ben had depleted the once full case of Proud Reserves down to a mere 6-pack. It was then that Ben announced that he needed to use the restroom. I drunkenly gave him directions to where the bathroom was and warned him to be quiet because everyone inside was asleep. Had I not spent the last couple of hours drowning my better judgment in beer and liquor, I would have accompanied him, but in the disabled mental state that I was in, I chose the easy company of Michelle, Tyler, and the last of the cold beer instead. 20 minutes passed unnoticed. Through the thin wall of the bathroom, that framed the far side of the backyard, I suddenly heard muffled reverberations, trembling through the cold night air. It was like a thumping, thump, thump, thump. I noticed that Michelle had heard it too. When we looked at one another, "What is that?" she asked. It was an eerie sound. It seemed to crawl into your ears and slither down slowly the nape of your neck, leaving a freshly sprung garden of goose flesh as it wriggled its way towards your guts. Some visceral part of me knew that whatever it was not a good sound. Tyler didn't like it either. I could see his giant ears swerving to capture its meaning. Without a word or another second hesitation, I crossed the small wooden porch, opened the sliding glass door, and entered the kitchen, following the same route that Ben had taken 20 minutes earlier. Inside, everything was dark and quiet. And still. No more phantom thumping, harassing my senses. Had I imagined it? I crept across the linoleum of the kitchen's floor onto the carpet of the living room. In the draping darkness, I immediately recognized and deciphered Sobe's muted, alert form. Her head and chest were raised in the way that dogs do when they are sitting up, while still laying down. Several shadowy inert bundles were clutched closely, protectively against her. I knew they were her sleeping puppies. Good, I told myself, they're okay. But I could not shake the mysterious chill that refused to release its icy fingers from my neck, gut, spine, and heart, even as I stared reassuringly at Sobe, safe in her spot with her puppies. I knew, somehow, that something was still terribly wrong. And then I understood what. Sobe had not looked at me when I had entered through the kitchen. The entire time I had been standing there, my dog had not moved her attention away from that place. I followed her statued stare and saw a softly spilled light from the floor of a short hallway that led to the bathroom. I covered the distance in several quick paces and turned into the hallway. The bathroom's door was slightly ajar, letting out the puddles of light that stained the darkness. Ignoring the inexplicable pounding of my heart, I approached the door and, without knocking, warily pushed it open. The first thing that hit me was the smell. I recognized it, and my stomach sank. Blood. The entire bathroom was suffocated by the muggy, unmistakable warm scent of blood. And something else, just as carnal. Sweat. Fear. Madness. Ben was standing fully clothed in the bathtub. His sweaty face was distorted by something indescribable. A rictus grin of grotesque delight. He was staring down at something hidden by his feet. I couldn't see what it was. The tub's belly swallowed it from sight. I moved closer into the same stale silence of the bathroom to have a look. Ben, for the first time, realized that I was there, but his twisted expression did not diminish when I looked into the tub. Nothing could have prepared me for the gruesome horror I saw. One of my puppies, the littlest one, a girl. She was smashed, broken, her soft brindle fur bright red by her own blood. Half of her skull had been crushed. One of her tiny front paws was still twitching. She was dead, or as close to it as she could possibly come. And Ben had killed her. I saw my puppy's blood. It was freshly splashed across Ben's shoes, socks, and pants. And when I looked at him, he was still smiling. I don't remember what I said. It wasn't much, but I knew there was nothing that I could do. I was too late. There was nothing left of the puppy but a small shattered body. So I left, quietly closing the door behind me. I think that I was in shock. I walked into the living room, gathered Sobe and the remaining 3 puppies, and locked them in T's mom's bedroom. Then I returned to the backyard porch where Michelle and Tyler were waiting for me. I didn't have to say anything. Michelle read it in the pale lines of my face. "What did he do?" she asked. I stared at her hard, wondering if she knew what kind of monster she had brought over to my place. "He killed my dog," I told her flatly. I didn't notice her reaction, only that Michelle, knowing how much I loved my dogs, knowing that this man had come into my home and murdered one of them, felt the immediately overwhelming and instinctive need to get as far away from me and what was about to happen as fast as she could. Seconds later, Michelle and Tyler had disappeared from the porch, around the side of the house, escaping into the night. I listened as the side gate opened, then hurriedly shut before going back inside. The lights were still off when I walked into the living room and stood by the front door, waiting. Just another noiseless shadow in the darkness. I shut my eyes, seeing what had been done. Hearing him emerge from the soiled bathroom, I opened the front door as wide as I could go and motioned for him to join me outside. The front lawn and the street beyond were completely deserted. Ben casually exited the house, and I smashed my fist into the bridge of his nose as hard as I possibly could. He fell into the grass, and I jumped on top of him. I hit him in the face a few more times before reaching into my back pocket and taking out the switchblade that I always kept there. I opened it up. Using my body's weight to pin Ben to the grass, I began choking him with my left hand and digging my knife blade into his belly with my right. The cut I made was slow and shallow. I warned him not to move. I promised that if he did, I would gut him right there on the lawn. He believed me and lay perfectly still, probably terrified that any further attempts at resistance would only result in disaster. I did not have a plan of what I was going to do with him. I only knew that I needed him to pay for what he had done. In the darkness, I heard someone call my name. I turned my head and saw my friend and neighbor, Brian, hair tousled from the recent sleep, standing barefooted in boxer shorts at the edge of the yard. He was gripping a bladeless axe handle that I knew he kept by his front door in both hands. Beside him were Michelle and Tyler. I knew what had happened then. Michelle had understood what I was going to do to the puppy murderer that she had brought to my house. Whether it was guilt or sheer panic that motivated her, some undeniable instinct told her to run and get help. The closest place that she could find was Brian's house. I snarled at him what he had done, the unforgivable atrocity that had been committed, and my immediate need to make him pay, to make it so he would never do something like this again. They both saw the knife in my hand, its tip buried in his belly, my other hand squeezing his throat. Brian cautiously strode forward and spoke to me like I was standing on a ledge. Quote, "I know, and we'll get him for that. Don't kill him. Take this, and we'll both work him over." End quote. I saw that he was about to toss me the axe handle. Issuing Ben a quick final warning, I sprang to my feet, knife still in hand, and turned my body to catch the axe handle as Brian tossed it to me. My back was turned to Ben for no more than 2 seconds, and in that time Ben had miraculously leapt up from the grass and bolted across the lawn. I have never seen anyone move so fast in my entire life. It was inhuman. I chased him, screaming into the night the things I would do to him once I caught him, but it was hopeless. He was gone. At my trial, my once friend and neighbor Brian testified against me. He told the jury that I was a dangerous psychopath, that the streets were not a safe place with me on them. But worst of all, he told them that I was the one who killed my puppy that night, and not just the one I had lost. He invented a story of a brutality where I had smashed every single puppy to death for the simple depraved delight that I found in hurting defenseless innocent things. And the jury ate it up. This was the picture they painted of me at my trial. You asked me why I took the stand? My answer is that I had to. No one believed me anyway. When they looked at me, they all saw the monster that I had chased down the street. I don't know what else to say. It still turns my stomach to think that this man they unanimously believed I was. After closing arguments, trial was complete and jury was adjourned. Shawn was led, wearing his rented suit and legs shackled, back to a small cell to wait. He didn't have to wait long. 45 minutes later, he was called back to the courtroom. Something he knew was a bad sign. To this he says, quote, 45 minutes, they decided I was guilty of all charges and deserved to serve the rest of my life in prison while most of the rest of the world was on their lunch break. I don't blame them, really. Hell, I would have found me guilty at the end of that trial, end quote. 8 months after his release in August of 2014, he was back in custody, this time for the murder of Forrest Martin, beating him to death. Quote, I did beat that man to death, but I do not believe that I am some soulless monster who woke up one day and suddenly decided to randomly engage in an unprovoked act of indelible violence. In the eyes of the man it was, without question, a justifiable homicide, end quote, wrote Shawn. From jail, he was transported to Coffee Creek Intake Center and subsequently on to the Oregon State Penitentiary. And this is where I first met him, as we all know by now. Immediately after his feet touched down, appeals began. The third appeal with the Oregon Supreme Court was filed in April of 2024 and subsequently denied. His time in prison, this time, seems to have worn on him. He spends a lot of time in the hole for various things. Often drinking, he likes to imbibe, if only to get away from reality for a while. In April of 2024, he went to the hole for an event he said he took no part in. Here, he says he went for unauthorized organization and assault 1 for a fight he was not involved in. He even says in his letter, who goes to the hole for an assault they didn't commit? Apparently he does. He says that he was sitting at a table with a buddy when a quote-unquote bad dude walked into the unit. His buddy jumped up and rushed him. They fought for a good half a minute or so before being pepper sprayed and sent to the hole. Afterwards, there was blood everywhere. As it turns out, his buddy broke his hand, and the compound fracture wasn't enough to stop him from continuing his assault. So every time he landed a punch, he was stabbing the guy in the face with a piece of bone that had broken through the skin. Everyone went into lockdown, and as a result, a few hours later, Shawn was told to cuff up too. He said if the video was reviewed, all you would see was him sitting at the table, his hands folded in front of him. But the officers posited that he had, quote-unquote, called the shot, and he spent 35 days in the hole. In July of 2024, he went back to the hole for Pruno. At this time, he says, quote, they bought me again, end quote. They found him bubbling Pruno, but he had gotten to imbibe twice before being busted. So on his end, he considered it a win. As in life and everything else about Shawn continues too. He went back in the hole for November, though this time he went to a place called Honor Segregation. And while he didn't get into any of the details, it means that Friday through Sunday, he's allowed to use the tablet and send messages to his friends and family for a few hours. He did another 30 days, and upon getting out of segregation, he got celled in for the 45 days on mainline. Since then, he simply bounced between the hole and general population. I would like to note here that he is clearly a known drug addict. He was supposed to be admitted to the MAP, now MOAD program. Essentially, because he's a drug addict, they treat with Suboxone. At least it used to be Suboxone. It might be something else now. And it cuts the time that people spend in segregation as a punishment for drug use, because at this point, there's no need for them to use drugs. However, because he's a lifer, he's considered a low priority, and that the people that should assist him are not going out to the current prison he's in. Often, again, the kicker is he's a lifer. Instead, he has spent 6 months of the year 2025 in segregation due to drug-related violations. If they had simply started him on the program that ODOC is legally required to do so, he would be violation-free. How ridiculous does that sound? I know, criminal, drug addict, blah, blah, blah. But the Department of Corrections has tools to prevent this recidivism to the hole, and they are choosing not to do it because of the length of his sentence at this point. And most recently, I got a letter from him, and he is in the hole for a fight with his cellmate. He had gotten out of the hole for drugs, went and was celled in with another known sex offender, which clearly we know that he does not appreciate. And so he beat him down and went back to the hole, I believe, under an hour of getting out. And that is the case of Shawn Yamate. And I know he sounds horrible, but he's actually hilarious to listen to. And yeah, that's all for now. I'm sure that he'll have plenty more stories coming out, and we'll get bits and pieces of them as we go through, maybe some updates. All right, for all those out there listening, be careful. It's a dangerous world we live in.
Yeah, one of my greatest fears of getting older, besides losing my hair, is losing my teeth. I lose my teeth because I see these guys here, and they struggle so bad with eating.
Yeah.
And I have a couple teeth in the back that got yanked a while ago. And I know, like, if I'm doing nachos or something, and I get like a shard chip, it'll just dig and just shank my deep of my mouth. I'm like, oh my god, this motherfucker just stabbed me. And I'm trying to play it cool. This little bead of sweat is coming down my forehead and tickle, but I'm looking. You know, I'm looking like that ain't shit. Trickle of blood on my mouth. But those guys, like the barber, he's a good guy, but he has no teeth. He's young too. You know, I mean, he's younger than I am. He's got no tops, no bottoms, no nothing. It's like, and I forget that he doesn't have the bitter beer face. Like he's not walking around like,
yeah.
you know what I mean? So I forget he doesn't have teeth. And I offer like, hey, Bo, fucking, do you want? He's like, I can't eat it, brother. Fucking, you know what I mean? Got no teeth. Like that sucks, dude.
That does suck. It's a weird way to start this conversation. Teeth. Okay. Okay.
You brought it up. I blame you.
I did not. I simply said I can hear you with that in your mouth.
Oh yeah.
And that you
That's right.
have done that to me multiple times now.